Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Class second year, our next topic is the transmission and generation of the nerve impulse inside a neuron. In this topic, we will study that how a neuron start generating and then transmit the nerve impulse or the message, electrical message, that is either it get from the receptor toward the coordinator or sometime it get from the coordinator toward the effectors. Actually, the neuron consists of the membrane, internal cytoplasm, and its membrane have two states. One state is known as polarized state or a resting state, and its membrane have electrical potential. Electrical potential means the potential or the power to do electrical work, or it is the energy that is present in the membrane to do electrical work. So here it is known as membrane potential because the membrane having this power or this type of energy. Now this is the structure of the nerve membrane, and here you can see the different proteins working for the transmission of the ions either outside or inside. So here we can see that this is the inner portion, inner part of the cytoplasm, inner membrane, inner portion of the membrane. This is the outer portion of the membrane. Normally at the resting stage or polarized state, it is when there is no nerve impulse passing from this membrane, and at that time when the membrane is at rest, we can see that here internally the membrane is negative, more negative than outside. Outside is positive. What are the reasons for this difference between the inner and the outer side? One is that sodium ions are present inside more in number, and potassium ions are more in number than outside. Potassium are 30 times greater inside the fluid, and sodium are 10 times greater than outside, but still the potassium is moving inside and sodium is moving outside. Both of these ions move against their concentration. Outer concentration sodium is more, but still it is moving outside, and inside potassium is more, but still it is moving inside. And why inside is negative? Because more sodium leaving at a time and less potassium entering the inside. If 2 potassium coming inside, 3 sodium will be coming outside. So what first reason is the movement of the sodium and potassium that make the membrane more negative inside and more positive outside. Second reason is the negative organic ions inside. For example, some proteins, some nucleic acids, some amino acids are present inside, and that are negative organic chemical compounds. So when they present at the inside of the membrane, they make the membrane more negative inside. Next reason is the leakage of potassium ion. Some proteins present in the membrane which are known as channel proteins, and these channel protein normally without any electrical channel, without any electrical signal, without detecting any electrical signal, they continuously provide the potassium ion outside, and this make the inside of the membrane more negative than outside. So normally when we see at resting position the neuron membrane, we can see this show the resting or the polarized state of the neuron when there is no nerve impulse passing. So the inside is more negative and the outside is the more positive. After this, the neuron, when getting impulse, and when it get impulse, it become active, and that is known as active membrane potential. From resting, the membrane state change into active, and this state is also known as polarized state. The polarized state change into depolarized state. The resting is polarized and the active is depolarized. And you can see here, when the membrane become depolarized, the state of the ions change there. And this occur only in one part of the neuron at a time, not the whole neuron. Here, the ions exchange internally positive, externally negative. So what caused these ions to change? This is caused by stimulus, and that stimulus is known as threshold stimulus. When threshold stimulus arise, the ionic state of the membrane change, and its potential change normally from minus 70 millivolts to 0, and then from 0 to the 50 millivolts. So the threshold stimulus is that stimulus which can change the ionic state of the neuron. One then other part of the neuron, continuously one by one part of the neuron become active. And this stimulus which can change the ionic state of the neuron is known as threshold stimulus. What caused the active membrane potential here? That is because of the arise of the threshold stimulus, and when threshold stimulus arise, it causes the influx of the sodium ion inside. Normally we already discussed that the sodium ion move outside, but here when the threshold stimulus arise, the sodium gates open. The sodium gates are the protein which transport the sodium. They open, and the sodium move from outside toward the inside. When sodium move inside, it means more positive inside, and it make the membrane depolarized, are from minus 70 toward the 0, and then from 0 toward the 50 millivolt plus 50 millivolt. After this period, at this stage, the nerve impulse pass from here, and then this part, when the nerve impulse pass, it then again repolarized. Repolarized mean that with the opening of the sodium gates, potassium gates are open too. After a milliseconds, after opening of the sodium gates, potassium gates open, and it start leaking from inside toward the outside. When potassium start leaking, moving from inside toward the outside, the membrane again starting polarized, and this state is known as repolarized state. Sometime sodium gates close, but potassium gates remain open, and it causes more negative state of the membrane, and this causes the hyperpolarization of the state. Normally it is minus 70, but sometime it goes below minus 70, and that state is known as hyperpolarized state, because more potassium leak out from the inside of the membrane. After that, when the nerve impulse pass, a refractory period arise. And what is refractory period? When the membrane starts to reach at its original polarized state, going toward minus 70 millivolt. So that period is known as refractory period. You can see all these changes through this graph. Like, this is the resting membrane potential when there is no changes of the membrane, and normally the membrane is at rest. more negative inside and more positive outside. And we already discussed the reason for the more negative state and more positive state of the membrane. So this is resting membrane potential. After resting membrane potential, which is minus 70 millivolt, a threshold stimulus arises, and threshold stimulus a stimulus which cause changes in the ion or in the state of the ionic state of the neuron membrane, neuromembrane. So it become from 70 toward the 0. After that, when sodium gets open and sodium start entering inside, it cause the membrane inside more positive, and that state we already discussed is known as depolarized state. And this is the action potential. This is the active state or depolarized state of the neuron when it start passing nerve impulse. After that, the potassium gets open and potassium move outside, and this state is known as repolarized state. A repolarized state, sometime more potassium leak out and it cause hyperpolarization. Hyperpolarization occur, and then at this state we say that the nerve membrane start refractory period, mean that period in which it prepare itself for the original position or for the passage of the new nerve impulse. So it goes to its original position, its original resting position, and at this position it equalize the sodium and potassium movement. More sodium outside and less potassium inside as at resting stage, so that it become from 0 toward the 50 and then from 50 toward the minus 70. So this is the whole acting and resting membrane potential summary, which is shown through this graph. And after this, a neuron is able to receive another impulse, and then again all these changes occur in the structure of neuron.